Hello and welcome everyone. We are so excited that you are joining us. We feel very passionate about this ministry and feel it's a really important discussion to have. So we're just very grateful that you are joining us tonight. I'm Michaela Johnson. Alongside Jenny and Michelle, we lead a Southland City group called Open Hearts for Open Homes. And I will be moderating the discussion tonight. So just to remind you, we're going to ask everyone to stay muted and have your video turned off so that you can hear our panelists. And we ask you to hold your questions until the end. We're going to do a live Q&A at the very end. If you do think of questions during the discussion, feel free to type them into the Zoom chat, and we will come back to them at the end if they haven't already been answered. So to kick off tonight, I'm going to hand it over to Pastor Josiah, and then we will get going with our panel discussion.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, it's super weird talking to a bunch of people over video. So, I mean, this is probably not what everybody's used to is on video, but I'm super grateful for you guys joining us. I'm looking through the list. I see some familiar names. And so thank you guys for joining us. But, you know, first of all, I want to give props to Michaela and Jenny and Michelle. They have done so much for this to get us all together and to kind of make the gap and bridge the gap between Southland and Together for Good. And so just to begin, I just kind of want to speak a little bit on behalf of Southland City Church. I know many of you aren't from Southland, which I think is awesome that we are able to unify as a community to do this all together. It doesn't have to just be our church. It can be people from all over. And, you know, the kind of vision that we have for Southland right now, and what we do it through is called the Greater Initiative. That's kind of the way that we fund and fuel the mission and vision of the church. And it typically revolves around missions and local outreach. And our kind of mantra for this year is from the neighborhoods to the nations. That we don't just want to make an impact around the world. We want to make an impact in our own backyards and in our own neighborhood. And that's where it starts. It starts in our neighborhood. In Scripture, Jesus says to start in your own neighborhood, in Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the world and to the ends of the earth. And so it started in their backyard and it went to the nations. And that's kind of what we are hoping to accomplish this year through the Greater Initiative. And I think Together for Good is a great way to start that. Our pastor, Pastor CJ, kind of cast vision for 12 areas of impact that we see Jesus cares about deeply. And 3 of those are for the orphan, for the widow, and for the vulnerable. And, you know, those are words that aren't used very often now, but the social and the emotional impact that God wants to have is this, in that time, is the same impact that he wants to have on the people that Together for Good is serving. The people who feel like they might not have a home, the people who feel like they might not have a community around them, the people who maybe, whether they're a single mom or a child who doesn't have the support that they need, that is our responsibility. And this is our opportunity to come around and help them. And so we're just super excited for this partnership. And whenever we make a partner, our hope is that we can engage our people, that our people have a way to be active and involved, a way to give back. And so there are so many different ways and opportunities and areas for people to partner with Together for Good. And I don't know all those ways, and I'm so glad that we have people here who do know. And so they are going to be kind of speaking. I'm sure that they have great insight to share with all of us. So at the end, I'm sure that Michaela and Jenny know but there is a group that if you are Southland or not, we want you to be part of. That is where they are going to kind of bridge the gap between Southland and what Together for Good is doing. And that's going to be an awesome community. So I'm sure they'll give you more details on that. But with that being said, I'm going to hand it back to you guys. And I'm super excited to hear and learn alongside everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josiah. So we have a lot of content to get through tonight. Hopefully we won't go over on time, but if we do and you need to drop off, feel free. We won't be offended. And if you have any questions that think can answer, just email them to me and I will make sure we get back to you. So to start things off, I want to introduce all of our panelists. We have kind of half of the people from Together for Good world and half people from the foster care world. So why don't you guys each tell us a little bit about you, yourself, your family, and kind of your background in this ministry. Maridel, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Hi, I'm Maridel Sandberg. I'm the president of Together for Good. I happen to live in Lakeville, just down the street from Southland Church, so that's pretty exciting. And I am the parent of, my husband and I are the parents of 8 kids. We birthed 3 and adopted 5 times. And so this journey of adoption and children in vulnerable places has been a big part of my life for the past 30 years. And I'm most excited about this opportunity to actually engage a vision of the entire body of Christ being engaged in vulnerable children and families. We know in Scripture we talk about orphans and widows, but we have some social orphans and some social widows who need some extra support and help. So we're just glad to be here. I know some of you on the line are part of our network already, so we're thrilled to have you. I'm most thrilled to talk about how we can work together and understand the system at large, and that's why we have Diane with us. Diane, want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Diane Stang. I supervise child foster care licensing and adoption through Dakota County Social Services. I'm very excited to be a part of this discussion tonight, so thank you for inviting me. As Maridel said, I mean, these are all our children, and these are children that are indeed in vulnerable situations. I actually supervise child foster care licensing and adoption, which is not common in most counties. However, in Dakota County, we think it works because we do indeed have a foster to adopt program. So thank you for including me tonight. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicole and Steve, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll start with my name is Steve Miller, and just a little bit about our family. We've been married almost 15 years now. We have 5 kids, and we have a set of twins that are 9 years old. Our oldest is 14, he's a boy. We have a 12-year-old now, and then we have a 2-year-old. So big family, they're all ours, and we've hosted now for a few years, and Nicole will tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've hosted for, it's been about 3.5 years since we've started on this amazing journey. And we've been involved with 3 families during that time. And it's been a lot of back and forth. The hostings ranged from a weekend to 4 months. But during that time of the back and forth, you know, you build a relationship with not only with the kiddos, but with the bio families. And that's the part that we just love. We love getting to know them more and getting to support them in other ways. But just the transformation that you get to see in the kids' lives and in the families' lives is just, it's incredible. And it's what keeps me, I think it's what keeps us going. In fact, I just got a text message from one of the moms, the first family that we hosted 2 of her kids 3.5 years ago. At the time, she was homeless, and now she finished school, she has a job, she just bought a house, and her kiddos are doing so well. And we're gonna meet at a park and just let the kids play and have some mom time. And it's been a really cool journey to be on.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Awesome. And Matt and Becca, do you want to go next?
Sure. We are Matt and Becca Hawks, and we are Dakota County foster parents. We have been married for 14 years, and we have 6 kids, 12-year-old, 11-year-old, 9-year-old twins as well, 5-year-old and 4-year-old. All of our children are adopted. Our oldest 4, we adopted from Ethiopia, 2 different trips, and then our younger 2, we adopted through Dakota County Foster Care.
And we've been doing foster care for about 6 years. We've been licensed for about 6 years, and we've had 41 kids in the last 6 years in our home. The last 4 years, we've done a lot of placements of sibling groups. So a lot of sibling groups of 2, sibling groups of 3. So I think we've had 4 sibling groups of 3 in a row in our house for the last 4 years. So we've pretty much been a family of 11 for a while. And for the last couple months, we've had no placements, so it's kind of felt quiet here with only 6 kids, which we like to joke about.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We are so excited that all of you are a part of this discussion. So next we'll kind of level set what Together for Good is and what foster care is and where they kind of overlap. So Diane, do you want to speak to Dakota County Social Services, who they are, who they serve, and what your objectives are?
Sure. Dakota County Social Services is a fairly large department, and we usually divide it by adult services and services to children and families. So indeed, the latter is where adoption and child foster care licensing is housed. Our Children and Family Services Department not only consists of adoption and foster care, but also obviously child protection, truancy, children's mental health, We have also childcare licensing, and we have programs that are an alternative to child protection. These are two voluntary programs, family assessment and the parent support outreach program.
Awesome. Maridel, then do you want to talk about Together for Good, who they serve and what your mission is?
Yeah, so we like to think about the vulnerable families who may not be yet in the foster care system, but are at risk, that we want to go upstream and come alongside families with the support and hosting so that kids never end up in that foster care system. We kind of like to ask the question, why would we wait until a child's already harmed before we get involved? And so ours is voluntary. So a family volunteers, asks for our help, and we voluntarily help them. So there's a big difference between what happens in foster care, where there's, children are removed when child protection is involved. But with Together for Good, the parents asking for help. That does change the game, because what happens many times is moms are struggling and they're afraid and they're alone. And if they're alone and afraid, they're worried that if they tell you they're struggling, that someone will come take their kids. And a lot of times it's because they themselves had strong connections to the child welfare system themselves. And so this continues to multiply the fear and anxiety. And so we know that in most cases, single parenting, trying to do it alone, having multiple children can be really, really stressful. And that number one indicator of child abuse and neglect, especially neglect, is social isolation. And so if I'm alone and I don't have that support, usually don't have good family support systems. So Together for Good becomes that family-like support that would wrap around a family, hosting and or offering respite, and then those practical ways of meeting the needs of that family, as well as then helping out with the family that's hosting that child. So it becomes this network of care, safety net, to try and keep as many kids as possible upstream, not in the foster care system. Sometimes it happens where a parent doesn't make progress or can't get quite on their feet, and then we have to call child protection. And sometimes those calls are screened in, and sometimes those calls are screened out. And based on that is then when child protection gets involved. We've seen that work really well, because the parent starts out voluntarily asking for help, and a trust relationship can develop, so that if this has to change, it becomes more of a family process together, as opposed to feeling alone and punished and unable to make those changes. So it's been a powerful tool. What we've also found is that there's a lot of people in general who are terrified of foster care, would be afraid to take in the kids that are extremely wounded and the behaviors that go with it. And or some people just purely say, I don't want the government in my life. That's kind of a common theme. And so what we found is that this early opportunity of engagement with families in crisis, we found literally hundreds and hundreds of Christian families who say, I want to help. I don't know how to help, but just tell me where I can go and connect with families. And so it's an easy on-ramp, if you will, to the whole experience of child welfare. And the most important thing that I think happens during that time is most of us don't understand child welfare. Most of us don't understand homelessness or the drug issue or all the other pieces that go along with struggling families. And so it's an opportunity to educate the church, educate Christians, so that they understand better, have more compassion for the families that we serve. So we're upstream, and if hopefully you don't have to end up in Diane's corner, because we'd like to keep them out of the system. Saves the county lots of money, and it saves families lots of stress. So we're excited to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I so appreciate, Maridel, what you're saying, because I really do believe it is a partnership. The Dakota County does not have the resources to do the early intervention prevention. I think the common theme that we have across both of our agencies is protecting the vulnerable, but also supporting birth parents. And what I love, and Matt and Becca have been a wonderful example of that, is partnering with birth parents, trying to alleviate the stigma of having a child in foster care, creating a bridge for positive role modeling and mentoring of birth parents so that they can succeed in getting their children back. Clearly, in my agency, we are driven by rule and statute, and for us to literally have the legal ability to remove a child from their parents' care is highly regulated. And it's nothing that we take for granted in any way, shape, or form. But when you look at the continuum services, Together for Good is more on the front end, and as Maridel said, prevents families from deteriorating to the point of needing child protection.
So you guys kind of just talked through this, but what ways are the county and Together for Good supporting each other and integrating? And then another related question is, can somebody be a host parent and a foster parent through the county at the same time?
I can start, Maridel, if that's all right. Yes, you are able to be both a licensed child foster parent and also work with the Together for Good program. We just ask that you let us know when you have a Together for Good placement. But again, the beauty is that our programs complement and the goal and the themes of getting birth parents stabilized so that they're able to resume being parents.
Awesome.
Yeah, really key. Oh, go ahead, Michaela. Did you have something?
Oh, no.
So I think we mentioned the similarities, right? We all care about kids. We all want to be a part of that protective services, whatever that looks like. Ours is on the informal side, foster care is on the formal side. But I think that the power of understanding the system itself, like understanding the process so that people can have compassion towards the foster parent or the host family or that parent who's struggling. So if we can change that paradigm, I think, what you mentioned about stabilizing or birth parents, it's all the same goal. It's just at different ends of that spectrum of child welfare. But in all of this, anybody who's wondering, your first step into this work should be, how can I support a host family? How can I support a foster family? How can I make their load a little lighter so that you get up close and personal to see that it's truly just families and children just like yours who for whatever reason didn't have mom and dad or didn't have that extra auntie or uncle to help them in their time of crisis. And so it just becomes very vulnerable really quickly, and we're just glad to be a part of it. So
yeah, so you're kind of getting at my next question. So if somebody doesn't feel ready or for whatever reason they're not able to be a foster or host parent, what are some really practical ways that they can get involved and serve this community of people, either through foster care or Together for Good?
Yeah, two things that we've done that have been really successful. One specifically meeting the needs of foster care. So our offices are in St. Paul, and one of the ways that we've reached out to our churches is actually to do backpack drives for foster kids, which allows then the church to get together, gather some things that are necessary for families, kids that are going into foster care. And we've then given those to the county to have on hand. And back in the day when someone told me that at one point Ramsey County needed like 500 bags, and I was like, you're lying. I can't possibly believe that's true. And certainly there's plenty of people giving backpacks. And then you find out how fast it happens and how many children are going into the system. But so it's one way that everybody could serve that particular need. But then on the other end, I think I spoke mostly about the whole idea of that wraparound care, that getting involved with, in our case, every Together for Good family is connected to a local church. And so then that church builds a team of people where you might have 10 families, 3 of them are strong host families that are going to do that hard 24/7. But then those other families are able to serve as respite or support or those resources. We don't want to buy diapers if we don't have to. We want to have someone else share the burden. And we've seen that happen beautifully. It's kind of like going on a mission trip together, only it's right in your own community. So yeah.
Awesome. Diane, is there anything to add from that you've seen of other ways to get involved specifically?
Yeah. Yes. And in fact, ever since COVID has started, we have gotten so many calls from private citizens asking what they can do to support foster children and foster parents. One of the things that I know we've offered to individuals or faith communities or Girl Scout troops is like a school supply drive in the fall. A lot of our foster parents need help with some of the school supplies. We've had Girl Scout troops collect gift cards that we're able to use for those kind of unusual requests for foster children, be it a special dress for prom or to help with graduation pictures. We often find too that faith communities find the foster parents and the Together for Good families that are within their own faith community. And as Maridel just said, supporting those foster parents, helping provide informal restaurant, helping with diapers and some of the expenses that come to foster parents are incurring.
Yeah, awesome. Diane, you talked about the program Foster to Adopt through Dakota County. Can you speak a little bit more to if somebody's hoping to go into foster care in the hopes of adopting a child, what is that like for them and what might that entail?
Sure. So know that about 78% of all of our foster children are reunified with birth parents, and that's a good thing because we are returning children to mom and dad. Know too, though, that when we have our foster to adopt program, we do ask you to start by doing just foster care. This is huge because it gives you a chance to get familiar with the types of children that potentially could become available for adoption through our agency, but it also gets us a chance to get to know you as well. In our world, as Matt and Becca can attest to, it's all about fit and match. While we don't guarantee placements, we also know that asking someone to be in our foster to adopt program it's a high ask. We're asking you to continue to support birth parents and mentor birth parents and work towards reunification, but always thinking in the back of your mind, if this child does become available for adoption, would you consider being their forever family? It's a big ask. So we have some additional training that we provide to our foster to adopt program or foster to adopt birth parents. We do have different kinds of foster care, but know that we don't have anything called short-term or like crisis foster homes. Many other counties have foster homes that only take short-term placements up to 30 days as we then transition that child to either a relative foster home or a more long-term foster home. We believe that that could lead to an unnecessary bounce. We're very blessed to have people like Matt and Becca that will take calls after hours and weekends. And often these are the emergencies where local police are involved and maybe the Dakota County Drug Task Force. And these are children that will come to your door. You would meet them at the police department and they need a safe refuge and a place to stay. And then we would ask that you stay with that child, or that child stays with you rather, until we are able to work towards reunification or potentially find a relative. We also have foster homes that just do respite, and this is an opportunity to assist with kind of the same population that Maridel is talking about. It could be giving mom and dad a break so that the situation doesn't deteriorate, that child protection needs to get involved. We also have foster parents that do respite for other foster parents, be it a planned vacation or a nephew's wedding, or just they themselves as foster parents need a break. So we do have a high percentage of foster homes that just do respite only.
Awesome. All right, we're going to switch gears just a little bit to hear more from the foster parent and host parent perspective. So Hawks and Miller family, I'm going to turn to you. And my first question is, how has it impacted you personally and your marriage to foster and host? So Hawks family, do you want to start?
Go ahead.
Sure. Can I just add something really quick about foster to adopt, since that was the previous question?
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that if foster parents are going in planning to adopt, it changes the decisions that they make for the child. And I think we've seen several foster families make decisions based on their family, thinking that a child is going to be a part of their family in the future. And in my opinion, they weren't in the best interest of the child. So if you are planning on doing foster care, every placement you go into, don't go in hoping that you're going to adopt that kid, because it's going to cloud your judgment and you're not going to be focused on reunification and supporting and helping their family to stay together. So that's something we've seen personally, and we've tried to be very careful about how we approach that.
Yeah, that's another thing I've heard is you got to be on team birth parent from the start if you're going to do foster care and Together for Good.
And it's not always easy.
Yeah, yep, exactly. All right, so how has it impacted you guys being foster parents?
Well, it definitely impacts your family and your marriage. When we take placements, Matt and I are on the same page as far as what we think is appropriate for our family, but we are constantly in communication with our kids too. Not that if they were like, we don't want 3-year-olds anymore, we would be like, okay, no more 3-year-olds, but we want them to feel heard. And so we have lots of family meetings to make sure that they feel heard. And that has really helped our kids to be on board with us doing foster care for so many years, because it isn't easy for them. It's not easy because they have kids coming and going, but it's not easy because a lot of times with these kids, you're going to give them a lot of attention, and you know your kids are good kids, and so they're just going to do their thing, and then they're like, hey, what about me? So we've just tried to really do a lot of special, we call them special dates, where we just take 1 or 2 kids out to make sure that they feel connected to us as our family is constantly changing.
Great.
Yeah, and it's definitely impacted our communication as a couple. We've had to be on the same page. There were times when we weren't. And there are times, when you get a phone call, when we get a phone call from social services, we don't always have a lot of time to make a decision. So we'll be asked, we'll be given an age of a kid or age of kids, and then we won't always have the opportunity to consult with the other to decide if we're taking a placement or not. So depending on what's going on with our kids and our family, we will often have discussions in advance about what age we are not willing to take right now, what ages we are willing to take. Are we willing to take kids right now? Things like that. Just, we always have to be in communication to know that we're on the same page.
Yeah, that's super important. How about you guys, Miller family? How's this impacted you guys?
I'd say for me, I was growing up, my parents volunteered at a soup kitchen, and I never really knew what that meant. I remember in my mind's eye, my dad was dressed up in a tuxedo pouring soup out. I had no idea. And I wanted to find volunteer opportunities where the whole family could get engaged. And so when Together for Good came up, it just seemed like an awesome opportunity for our kids to be part of the whole experience. So that was really important for me. It impacted me personally. And also our relationship. At times when you're considering hosting, or when you are hosting, or right after you're done hosting, you're having really meaningful discussions, about real world things, either with that host family or about how in the world could it have gotten to this point with that kind of family, and how can we help? How can we make the world a better place? So you're really bonding together as a couple when you're talking about real stuff like that. So it's been a very good thing for our marriage.
Yeah, I agree. It's been great for our marriage and for our family in general. But I think, just like you guys were saying, Matt and Becca, communication is key, and we have to be on the same page. And we have to be on the same page in marriage most of the time anyway, right? But like this, when you're bringing in, when you have kids at home and you're bringing in more kids, it just emphasizes that even more. So just making that a priority, which only strengthens our marriage and makes us stronger. So that's been really cool. And then for me personally, like I was sharing, it's been such a great journey to be able to build relationships with the bio moms that we've been able to be in contact with. And I love that part. So it's been a great journey for me that way.
And just to add, being on the same page, just because you're on the same page doesn't mean you have to be of the same opinion. So oftentimes Nicole will say yes before the phone even rings. And so she's ready to go. And I'm the one going, well, we should think about this, that, and the other thing. So it is a process of aligning, getting on the same page. But definitely, at least in our experience, there's one that's a little more rambunctious and ready to go. And the other one's a little more, taken aback. And I think that can be a good thing to make sure it's the right fit for the family.
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys speak to what has been the most difficult part of your journey so far, and how do you stay motivated to keep going and stay involved?
I think for us, this is our family's mission, to love and care for the orphan and the widow. And this was the way that we felt the Lord led us to do that. And so that just, this is our mission field right now. And so this is what we're doing. Even when it gets hard, you just remember that this is what you've been called to do. And so you keep doing it. I think the hardest part for me is letting go of control. Because the kids come in, you get into a good routine, and then they start heading towards reunification, which is the goal. But it's still hard because you want to be in control. You want that mom and that dad to be perfect, and nobody's perfect. But I think for me, the hardest part is you love this child so much and you want the best for them. And sometimes going back to birth mom and dad doesn't seem like the best, even though it is. And so letting go of that control and trusting the process, that's definitely the hardest part for me.
Yeah, and building that relationship with their social worker and kind of getting on the same page with them sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's really difficult. Sometimes personalities conflict and you've got to just understand, and they have to understand that we're all on the same page. And that in certain placements has been a challenge for us. But as far as me, what keeps me motivated, the one thing that I think of a lot is that a lot of these kids, even kids that are going home, probably, I don't know, I would say a majority of the kids that we've had, I am possibly the only father that they're ever going to have in their life. And that is, I don't know, that's something that just weighs on my heart and makes us want to keep going.
Yeah, wow. How about you guys, Millers?
Yeah, for me, the hardest part for sure is saying goodbye, even if it's temporary. I think we have kind of a unique situation maybe where we're still in contact with all of the kiddos in some way. So even through that back and forth, those saying goodbyes it's hard, and it involves me trusting God in a whole new way when we're letting them go, just like you were saying, Becca, into sometimes uncertain circumstances, and you don't know exactly how it's going to be for them, and you love them so much and you just want the best for them, and so it can be challenging, but it keeps me motivated because of the goal, and the goal is reunification and keeping that family together and making that family unit even stronger, and then the chance that we might get to see them again, not necessarily through a hosting, but maybe just to keep in contact with the family to see them again and hope that they're doing well, and they don't need our help at some point.
I would say for me, it's those first couple of days, up to a week or so. And it's usually harder depending on the background of the kids. If they come in and they've had some abuse or they've had some neglect, there's some behaviors that I don't understand, as I'm not a psychologist. And certainly whether it's Together for Good, Maridel, other experiences, that helps a lot in understanding. So you learn quite a bit, but some of the kids come in with some real issues. And so just dealing with that the first couple of days can be tough. But in terms of motivation, for me, the hostings have been fantastic. And if I'm honest, part of the reason that we do it as a family, it's a little bit selfish. It's so good for our family. It's so good for our kids, so good for us, to just be able to put our arms around a couple of kids. And, we become more others focused, less self-focused. And we love doing that. But there comes a time when, especially after a long hosting or a difficult one, you want to push pause. Nicole and I have a 2-year-old. So when Ian was first born, we pushed pause for a number of months. It might have even been up to a year. And that's okay. And I think that's something else that might motivate you and keep you going, is just to know that you don't have to host somebody constantly 12 months out of the year. You can do it for a season and push pause if life gets tough or things change. And honestly, things like this, I was thinking it's been a little while since we've hosted. It's just so motivating to hear the stories of what you can do in people's lives. And, we'll be back to hosting again soon here, I'm sure. But that's very motivating for me.
Yeah. You guys both kind of alluded to this, so I'm going to ask. So a lot of times we hear people say that they can't do it because they're afraid that they'll get too attached. How do you respond to that? And obviously it happens. You both spoke to that, but what do you say to people who have that reaction?
We normally tell people that, you can never, what is the saying? The kids can never have too many people they love in their lives. Mm-hmm. And even though it's hard to say goodbye, you can just make such a huge impact on their life and the parent's life as well. It's just worth it. And what I like to think about too is our family is very secure. We are in a really good place emotionally. We're a very strong family. And so even though it's hard to say goodbye, we still have those strong bonds to carry us through and get us through those really hard goodbyes. But they maybe have never, a lot of these kids come and they're like, okay, bye, Mom. They don't even care. They're just used to being bounced around and never having structure and real bond of a family. We've had so many kids come in, older kids say, I cannot believe you don't yell at your kids. You're so loving and nice. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you poor thing, come here. So it's worth it because if we didn't take them in and love them in a, you know, in a reckless way or whatever, however you want to say it, they may never experience that love.
Yeah, that difficulty on our end is a small price to pay for the return we get. And to be completely honest, and I tell people this too, a lot of the kids, sometimes kids are really hard to say goodbye to, and sometimes they're really easy to say goodbye to. So there's definitely that.
Yeah, for sure. So Hawks and Miller family, can you guys speak to how your faith has played a role in your journey, or maybe how you felt God prompting you to do this in your life? Miller?
Yeah, I feel so close to the Lord during our hostings. It increases my prayer life in so many different ways, right? And some of my sweetest moments have been ministering to these kiddos. That we had a little girl who I grew up in a very traumatic and just challenging childhood, and my dad was killed when I was young, and my mom was disabled and in a wheelchair, and it was just lots of challenges growing up. And God orchestrated this perfect hosting that we had with this little girl that had unfortunately very similar circumstances. But being able to minister to her was it's just amazing. Knowing, praying for her, and I think for her too, to see that you can get through those hard things. She told me that was comforting to her. Just helping them get through the hard stuff. I remember one time, there was another time when we were considering a hosting, and I was praying about it, and all of the objections were coming up in my head. We had 4 kids at the time, and to go to 6 seemed like a lot at that time. And so every objection I brought to the Lord, he just, not a verbal or not a audible voice, but just in my spirit, I got this deep sense to just him saying, trust me. How am I going to make dinner for all these kids? Trust me. My husband has a business trip coming up. Can I handle 6 kids up? And trust me. And it was just that over and over again. And it was, he provided everything that we needed, not to say it was easy, but he provided everything that we needed. So it's just a great opportunity to trust him more.
Yeah, and obviously in Scripture, God has a heart for the widow, the orphan, for the imprisoned, and sometimes in our society, it's hard to see that those people as being equally loved by God, and you see that so clearly in this ministry, that these are all really, really special people in God's eyes, in our eyes. So that's played a big role in terms of our faith, but also we can bring some of these kiddos a little bit further along in their faith. We're still doing by the way, we are not perfect parents. And you don't have to be a perfect parent. I actually think these hostings improve me as a parent. And it brings me closer to my own kids as well as the kids that we're hosting. But you do your normal things. We're going to church. We're praying before dinner. We're praying at night. Every once in a while you get a kid that, if I get out of that routine, that comes with their Bible and says, can I pray before we go to bed? I'm like, oh geez, they're teaching us about Scripture and about faith. And it's just really neat to bring those kids along in that journey. We actually had one kid that we hosted that through the process of going to church with us, got plugged in and actually got baptized with her mom's consent, but and support and love and all of that stuff. But that was really cool, that we could be there for that kid and grow her faith as well as our own in the process.
Wow. How about you guys, Hawks family? How's your faith played a role in
Yes, thank you. I'm like, what are we talking about? So we adopted our 4 children from Ethiopia, and when we adopted our twins, we had the opportunity to meet their birth mom. And I honestly can't remember a lot about the conversation, except there was this 2 things, but the one thing that's important to this conversation, the one thing that is always stuck in my head is that she said, I don't want to give them up for adoption, but I have no choice. Like, it's either give them to you or they die of starvation. And that was just like mind blowing, because when you don't see a parent you kind of disassociate, and then you're like saving the kid. I don't know. I don't know how to really explain it, except that we were like, we should not be adopting these kids. They should be growing up in Ethiopia with their birth mother. But we live in a broken world, and that was not a possibility. And so we were like, how can we stop this from happening? And so that's where, you know, I talked about this earlier, caring for the orphans and widows. And so our goal from the start in foster care was to help keep families together. That was our goal. Let's keep these families together. How can we support them during this difficult season? And then we had the opportunity to adopt 2 kids. And our daughter has 6 full-blood birth siblings. And it was, I mean, we were supposed to adopt her. I love her. I would never, you know, I love her so much. But it just breaks my heart sometimes to think that she was removed from her family, because she shouldn't be with, she should be with them. But again, broken world and the circumstances. And so anyway, all that to say that that's how we got involved. And so we just, you know, we spend a lot of time praying for these kids, praying for their birth parents. And we always say with the kids, because they don't always understand, we pray for the mom and dad to get their work done, and whatever that work is. And so it's driven us to our knees a lot to pray. And so we've just grown in that way.
Yeah. And both of you guys talked about, you know, how we're called to care for the orphans and the vulnerable. And I feel like one clarification I want to make with everyone listening is we're not called necessarily to be foster or host parents, but we are called to care for them in some way. And so it's really about finding what way is the best fit for you and your family. And hopefully you'll get some ideas or guidance in this discussion of other ways you can serve that community of people, even if it's not becoming a foster or host family. So just wanted to make that point since we are focusing a lot on that. All right, so Hawks and Miller family, another thing that many people say is that they're worried it'll affect their children already in their home, whether that's biological or adopted. And they're worried for their safety, they're worried for their emotional and mental health. Can you speak to your experience with this, how it's impacted your children, good or bad, just so people kind of get a picture for what that's like? Hawks family, if you want to start us off.
Sure. We've definitely had some situations with foster kids that have impacted our children's mental health and well-being. But the truth is I worry about their health and well-being regardless. And I think that having foster kids in the home, talking about people that are more vulnerable and people that have, I mean, frankly, that have worse, I won't say worse life, but worse struggles in life, more difficulty than our kids are used to seeing, things that our kids couldn't imagine, I think has helped give them perspective and has really helped them really grow. I think it's going to help them grow in their faith as they grow. I think it helps them just see without having to leave their home, they're really able to see more of the world. I mean, almost the same kind of experience you get traveling, to see different cultures and, you know, whether for good or for bad, and to see what we have here and what we're doing here that works and what they see in other families that doesn't work, and to really, I mean, almost grow up a little bit just from seeing what these other kids have experienced.
Yeah, it's definitely given them more compassion, especially now that our kids are getting older and we are taking older kids that like match their age. Then they'll be like, oh, why is so-and-so so mean? Like, they're just always mean to me. And then we have a family meeting and say, listen, this is the situation she's coming from. Wouldn't you react? Oh yeah, okay. So how can we be better? How can we teach her a different way? And it's really led to good discussions with our kids, and opportunities to teach them to serve other people, even when it's hard.
And I would say Maridel and Together for Good community have set up, at least for Together for Good, a lot of different opportunities to make sure that you are safe. You mentioned, Michaela, the word safety. You know, you don't have to share, for example, your full name and your phone number and all of that stuff with the birth parents, birth mom or birth dad or whatever that is. So there are a lot of those things in place that I'm sure you guys can if you're interested, do the training and read up on. But But I'll kind of echo what Matt and Becca were saying in terms of the kids. Far from being hard on them, I think it's ultimately really, really good for them, right? They're experiencing other cultures, they're experiencing other backgrounds and scenarios, but they're also, again, going back to kind of the reason I really want to engage our family in this is they're partnering with us and ministering to other people. So they're volunteering, they're driven to their knees, they're praying, they're seeing things that's causing them to pray more than just, God protect me at night and help me to have no bad dreams. They're actually really growing in their prayer life. They're growing in their faith. So I just overall, there are challenges. There are heartaches and things, but it's been so good for our kids, so good for our family.
Yeah, I would just, echo all of that. Just a couple of stories that came to mind as you guys were talking. One was at a church when our twins were, I think they must have been 4 or 5 at the time. They were learning about, I think it's in Thessalonians, about building each other up. And he was trying to figure out what that meant. And we were hosting at the time. And he was just playing Legos with the little boy we were hosting. And he's just encouraging him in building and what he was building. And then he came to me at bedtime and he was like, is that building him up, Mommy? Is that? I was like, yes, exactly. They're doing it. So good. So it is, I've had people ask me that too. Are you worried about your kids getting too attached? Are you worried about bringing, kids into your home that you don't know how they're going to react? And I would say that the benefits how far outweighed anything that you might worry about. And in fact, we were talking with our kids about doing this discussion with you guys tonight, and I asked my 11-year-old little boy if there was anything that he wanted to share with maybe another 11-year-old little boy that might be welcoming kids into his home for the first time. And he said, there's been times that I didn't really want to do it. We always sit the kids down and have a discussion and we pray about it, and when we're going to be welcoming kids in. And he said there's been times that I was kind of on the fence and I didn't really want to do it, but he's like, it's been so good. It's been so good. It always is good to welcome them into our home and to have them be a part of our family.
Oh, that is so sweet and so encouraging to hear how it's impacted all of your children. So it looks like we're have about 15 minutes left. So before we wrap things up and open it up for questions, I want to give everyone listening some tangible next steps that they want to take. So Hawks family and Miller family, based on your experience, what ways can the faith community really actively support and help foster and host families?
So for us, I think when we get new placements, we have a group of friends that really supports us. So they'll often bring us a meal or a gift card or something. That's always helpful because when a new placement comes, you're like, whoa, for like a week. So meals are always helpful in that time, or formula, or
the last 4 years we've had 3 foster kids at Christmas, and a couple of those years our church or members of the church or other organizations have, some of the years have helped, whether it's donate gifts or money towards gifts, things like that have really helped.
Yeah, paying for like all the gifts for the foster kids, which was amazing. Yeah. Or just, coming over, babysitting. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many ways you can help, just little things, a gift card, diapers, like you mentioned at the beginning, coming over and helping. You can come over and clean my house. That'd be awesome.
I mean, even as little as the people that, befriend that are their Sunday school teachers at church. We have, kids in the church that befriend these other kids, and or even like our neighbor kids. When we have a couple foster or kids that were foster kids that come back and see our kids and visit sometimes because they're friends and they've kept in touch, and to have a neighbor or to have a friend at church be like, oh my goodness, Shelly's here, and be really excited about it. Really just, it's really supportive to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, based on the chat, there was a couple comments here. Definitely prayer. We could use your prayer always. Someone asked about writing letters to the kids. That'd be a fantastic idea. Our own list here, similar to Matt and Becca's, but driving for school. I know a lot of times the kiddos that we're hosting, can only be a week or 2 or 3, and it can take a week to set up busing. And so for that first week, we're driving Nicole usually has the load here, but is driving all across town taking kids to school. So that kind of stuff can be really helpful. Some people have actually set up a little supply warehouse, maybe out of their basement, out of their garage. And so when a need comes, you know, they've got diapers, they've got kid or baby gear ready to go. And then there's a known, like within your community, within the church perhaps, or within a certain community, this is the place you go. This is the person you call if you need something. Meals was another one, clothes, respite care. And just, you know, anything you can do to wrap around these families would be really helpful.
Yeah, awesome. Diane, if someone wants to become a foster family through Dakota County or maybe a private agency or their own county, what would be that next step that they should take?
Sure. We ask folks that are interested to first come to an informational meeting, and because of COVID, we've actually moved those to a Zoom format. So our next foster care informational meeting is July 9th from 6 to 8. If you're interested, just go to our Dakota County website under Health and Families, and you can toggle down to Child Foster Care, at which point you'll find our informational meeting schedule. We actually probably will do Zoom July and August, and we'll see what September brings. Just email me. My email address is on the website, and I'll send you a Zoom invite. At the informational meeting, you'll hear about the foster care licensing process. You'll hear about the Foster to Adopt program and next steps.
Awesome. And we'll send out an email to everyone tomorrow and include a link out to that so people can.
Great.
Maridel, if anyone wants to get involved in Together for Good at any capacity, what would that first step be for them?
Yeah, so you'd go to our website, tfgood.org, and up in the right-hand corner is a button that says join. And it's just an interest survey to get an idea of what you might be interested in doing. We ask your name, address, phone number, and then from there we send you an application based on what that might look like. We are always looking for drivers. It's such an important need, but we never have enough of. And we also are offering info meetings on Zoom as well. And that's on our website. So tfgood.org events, and you'll see a schedule there. Actually, there's one tomorrow night. So if you wanted to join us tomorrow night on a Zoom call, we could send that to you as well. But it's a great opportunity to engage at any level. I think it's really important to explore and find a best fit for your family. There's a place for everyone. I mean, in our case too, we're a nonprofit. So like we could always use help with business development, fundraising, and all those other pieces of the puzzle as well. So, yep.
Yeah, awesome. So we'll link out to those things as well. And then one plug for the Southland City group. So people who go to Southland, or if you don't, another way to get involved would be to join our Southland City group. And so we were created to support Together for Good as Southland's greater initiative partner, and also to provide support for foster and host families right here in our community. But we also do a lot of events to help serve the community as well. So a recent example was that there was a little boy who went into a host family in Apple Valley, and he didn't come with many clothes or diapers. And so we heard about the need and did a sign up genius for clothes, diapers, shoes, everything. And within 24 hours, our city group and Southland City moms had everything met and delivered to the host family. So that's just an example of a way that you can get involved right at Southland to continue to do things like that. And I know that host family was beyond grateful and just in awe of what Southland could do so quickly for them. So our city group meets once a month, usually on Sundays, but our next one is in July 6th. We moved it because of the 4th of July. And then in August, we're going to be kicking off a book study for Jason Johnson's book, All in Orphan Care. It's about exploring the call to care for vulnerable children and families. And so we just want to, as a group, read this and discuss it and kind of have a foundation for why we're all involved in this. And we're also going to be giving out 2 copies of this for our prize giveaway for people who registered. So on that note, we will be emailing the winners of all the prizes tomorrow. So keep an eye out in your email for that. It'll be 2 copies of that book, Starbucks gift card, and also a t-shirt from a company called Goods and Better, where every purchase goes to help a child entering the foster care system. So stay tuned for that. We'll be, like I said, sending out an email tomorrow, likely with links to all of these things that we're talking about. So you can take those next steps and continue on your journey in whatever way that looks. So now we will open it up for Q&A. You can use the chat or you can raise your hand. And I gotta remember how to do that. And we will call on you and then Jenny will unmute you so you can ask your question.
We have a couple questions already. One is, does Together for Good only work in Dakota County?
Oh, Together for Good works all the way from, we have an office in Rochester, all the way up north to Isani, so all of the Twin Cities metro area. We actually have some people starting in St. Cloud, and Mankato's probably next. Really, there's a need throughout the whole community. You'd be surprised, even in some of the more rural areas, but primarily the Twin Cities down to Rochester and up to Isani County. And actually, another really important point is, while Diane and I have this wonderful opportunity to do this together, other counties have different approaches and different needs in terms of how they relate to us, but we're all in the same boat in terms of needing more foster families and more host families, just in general.
Another question here is with Together for Good, is there a caseworker similar to a county situation? And what is the relationship and interaction with the birth family when you do a Together for Good hosting?
Yeah, well, I think the Millers did a good job of explaining how the opportunity to build relationship with the family is yours, you know, for however you want. But every single one of our cases, when we have a hosting going on, we have professional social workers or case managers that oversee that hosting. We like to say it's ministry mobilization with professional oversight. And so we have similar social workers that work with our organization as well. And so they're going to make sure that you're doing okay, that that child's safe in your home, that that mom is doing okay in communication with you and kind of managing that relationship, if you will. And so, yeah, that's my question.
Are you able to foster if both parents are working?
Yes, you are. Actually, Minnesota is known as having one of the highest two-income household percentages in the nation. And so, yes, we often have two-income households. We also provide a stipend. We call it a foster care per diem. And if indeed a foster child has to go into child care, that per diem can be inflated to assist with that cost as well.
Any insights for people without children in their home already?
Well, I can tell you from the Dakota County perspective, I'm sure the same as with Maridel too, and Together for Good, is that we just provide a lot of training. And the training is a lot about child development, but also focuses on children that maybe have traumatic backgrounds or personal stories, personal journeys. So I wouldn't look at that as a deterrent in any way, shape, or form.
And I'll just give you my personal experience. My husband and I were empty nesters and we've hosted, so there's no kids. And some of the kids we've had in the past, they actually kind of like it because their home might be kind of chaotic and crazy and they get one-on-one attention. So that has worked out well for us. What sort of things can people pray for in regards to hostings? I guess one of my comments on that is, if you're part of a church group, when people go into hostings, we'll do a shout out usually for those needs. And often there's prayer needs as well. It might be for the birth mom or the child or the host family. I mean, it could be any range of things. Michaela had talked about a family we've kind of wrapped ourselves around, and she reached out and asked for prayer for her kids who were at home because it was a difficult transition. It was their first hosting and they just had a tough time adjusting. So that will vary quite a bit, kind of depending on the situation. But I think in general, it's just to make the families whole. That's probably the overriding theme on the prayer requests. when you have your own birth children, I think we covered that. What do you need to think about when welcoming other children into your family with your birth children?
Yeah, I can take that one. One of the things that we like to do is, unfortunately, there are a lot of hosting needs out there. And so Together for Good will send an email, and there'll be, many that you can pick from. And oftentimes one will jump out at us. And a lot of times it's ages of the kids that are similar to the kids that we have at home, right? So if you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, at least for us anyway, we shy a little bit away from hosting, let's say, like a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old, where not only the toys that we have here, but also maybe the language they're using, maybe just the kinds of stuff they're interested in isn't a good match. So that's definitely something we take into account. Similar to Matt and Becca, we'll talk to the kids, we'll pray about it, we'll bring them in and see if it seems to be a good fit. So the numbers of kids make a difference. If we've got 5 kids here, we've only got spots for 1 or 2. And if it's a hosting of 3, it just doesn't match for us. And then just practically, the social workers and caseworkers at Together for Good will help you with this, but depending on what the background is of the kids, you might want to make sure that they have a chance to take a shower right when they get there. They might not have had that chance for a while. There might be some discussions you want to have with the kids right away about, are they comfortable sleeping on their own, like in their own room, and provide that space for them, at least for the first few nights, so that they get oriented and your kids kind of have that separate time. So it's a lot of conversations depending on the particular hosting that you're doing.
We are at 9 o'clock now. Would anybody be opposed to hanging on for a couple more minutes for some more questions, or we can just respond? Panelists, do you have a preference here?
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. Are there legal concerns or requirements with caring for someone else's child, like discipline, safety? Is this something the informational meetings would cover?
From the county perspective, yes, it is covered in the informational meeting. Know that when you get licensed by Dakota County, you actually will get a license with the state of Minnesota letterhead on it, not Dakota County. All 87 counties in the state license on behalf of the state of Minnesota. So a lot of the decisions regarding the licensing requirements are from the state of Minnesota. State of Minnesota says you're not allowed to use corporal punishment, which includes spanking. So we will work with you as part of the training to talk about what are the other forms of intervention or consequences that you can impose instead of physical punishment. In terms of safety, we also encourage foster parents to have as much of a normal relationship with foster children as they do with their own children. And so safety, we would ask that you to exercise those same safety measures with foster children as you do with your own children. We'll be looking at things in terms of safety of the home. So we're going to be looking at the physical environment of the home, as I'm guessing Maridel does as well, in terms of, is there 2 means of escape from a bedroom, etc. Not sure if that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the hosting arrangement is also overseen by an actual statute of Minnesota state law that allows for a parent to voluntarily ask for another parent to watch their child. And so that is a legal document as well that we use specific to that, and as well as then paperwork involving the mutual understanding of the volunteer relationship. So yeah, we cover that in extensive ways. And honestly, it really is, we only want really good parents hosting kids, and really good parents do really good things with their kids to make sure everybody's safe, right? So it's our highest priority of all. And we also, the corporal punishment's not allowed as well. We have rules on that. But that's a lot of stuff addressed in the training. Yep.
I think that was probably one of my biggest concerns going in, and Together for Good's done a really good job of providing whatever the legal instrument is that you as a host parent can have your kids, have the host kids be watched by a respite family. You can take them to certain places, childcare, and at the gym, for example, has been worked well for us. And I think that was really important for me to know that was covered. And even if you're going on vacation somewhere, and you can work with the host mom through Together for Good to make sure that you can go camping in Wisconsin or whatever it might be. Really some of the concerns I had about the limitations and the safety and the legal aspects of it were all taken care of. And there's a lot more detail in the training, but I was impressed with the level of background and support that we have as part of the program.
If a child is school age, which school would they go to? Where the foster home is, or where their family, their bio family is?
From a county perspective, our position is it's hard enough to be taken away from mom and dad, but also to have to switch schools. It really is seeming like you're adding more trauma to the situation. And so we will always look within the same community where the child resides in their home school. And then if I can't find a home, let's say the child is going to school in Farmington and I can't find a Farmington home, I'll go the next tier out. We actually will reimburse foster parents who are driving children back and forth to the home school, but truly we do our best to keep them in the same district where the child previously resided.
And our hostings are always shorter, much shorter term, so we would always want to keep that kid in the same school as well. And so that's why another reason why we've needed drivers, so that host families don't have to do all of that driving themselves. But now with COVID, who knows, everything might be online for the rest of our lives.
I've been impressed at how quickly the busing can get set up too. Yeah. We've had kids, we're in the North Metro, we've had kids get bused to and from schools that are, 20, 30 minutes. It's tough for the kids to be on a bus that long, but I think it's way better that they're still in their same school with their friends and all of that. So it's amazing the infrastructure around families.
Diane and Maridel, can you speak to a common question of how long do the placements last? What's a typical?
Yeah, our typical hostings are probably about 45 days. We have really short, and then we have really long. So we partner with Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge. So if a mom wants to go into treatment, that's going to be longer, like up to a year, 18 months. We also partner with the Shakopee Women's Prison. And so if a mom has a baby while she's in prison, that can be, a year, year and a half. So that's really long. And then we have the short respite weekend. Currently, because of COVID, things are pretty much very short unless it's a prison scenario like that. But I mean, we all know that 24 hours of no children and you're a new person, right? So we're trying to encourage and help parents to get build resilience and enduring strength. It only takes a little while to get some real energy back. So
Maridel, can you tell us a little bit about the need for drivers? And is it the same families people are giving rides to? Is it a variety? And what are the requirements to be able to drive kids around?
We have an application process and a background check, and then assurance of license and all that stuff. But we have two events that we do on a regular basis. One is a mom's luncheon, and so those moms, in order to get to our office to participate in that monthly luncheon, needs drivers to drive them back and forth, and that usually can be assigned, to a family if they want. Ideally, if you're hosting a kid and that kid needs to get to school, wouldn't it be great if someone else in your church community could do that driving part for you so that you can still get to work, or your other kids can get where they need to go? Just again, lightening the load, sharing the load. I don't want to make it sound negative. It's a positive load, but certainly every little bit helps. And then from time to time, it's purely like this morning, someone needed to get to a meeting at court and she could only get halfway there with her resources. And so she stopped at the office and we gave her a ride to the courthouse, that sort of stuff. But we like those opportunities, again, to build connections, to build relationships in meaningful ways. And of course, car rides are such a great one because they can't leave you. My best teenage moments with my kids are in car rides. So.
Diane, can you speak to getting licensed through the county versus a private agency and what the differences are with that?
Yeah, and truly there is no difference. Again, we are a state-administered, state-governed, county-administered state. That's how Minnesota is structured. And so when they set forth the licensing requirements to be a child foster care parent, those same requirements hold true with the private agencies as well as with all counties. And again, it's similar to what we've talked about. We do require a criminal background check. Again, the safety check of the home. Part of the licensing requirements includes a home study, where a chance for us to really get to know you. You get to decide the ages and the the types of children that you would want to bring into your home. And most importantly, you get to say no. There will be no negative repercussions. Doesn't mean we might not call you again, right, Matt and Becca? But we actually have pretty extensive training as well, as I've mentioned, from crisis de-escalation to how to deal with children with trauma histories to child development, how to work with birth parents, what is our court process like, etc. Michaela, you had asked previously what the average length of stay is in Dakota County, and I was starting to smile, and I thought, I should just ask Matt and Becca that. It's almost like anywhere from soup to nuts. Am I right, guys?
Yeah. We've had, I think that our average for some strange reason is longer than most. I think in my experience, it depends on whether the parents are going to drug court or not. It seems like drug court takes longer. And I think that the majority of our placements have been like 4 months or longer. We've had a lot of placements that are 6 months or longer, but we know other foster parents who they'll have somebody come in and leave after a weekend, or a kid here. We've had one kid that was here for less than a full day, but like for us, our average, if I open up my spreadsheet and looked, I could probably tell you, but our average is like 3 to 4 months for our family. And we've had, I said 41 kids earlier, and I think it's a total of 16 or 17 placements. Maybe 18. So.
Yeah, our research shows that the average length of stay is 4 to 5 months. When you look at the total number of placements over a duration of time.
Maridel and Diane, what is the average length of time it takes to get accredited to be a foster or a host family?
Go ahead.
Okay, so in Dakota County, it is less than 2 months. However, some of the reasons why your license might be delayed is if you have lived outside the state of Minnesota in the past 5 years, that will truly slow down your criminal background check. And then if there is something in the criminal background check that needs to be either waived or set aside, that request has to be made to the state of Minnesota, and that will slow things down as well.
I would say, depending on how fast you do your paperwork, right? And so some people take their time because they're just not sure, and other people do it quickly, but I'd say 2 months is very similar. I mean, if there was an emergency and I needed someone within a week, we could, rush something through, but we don't really do that. I mean, it's more along the lines of 1 month, 2 months.
Hey, Maridel, could you talk a little bit about how the connection is made between you guys realizing there's a need and then getting a host family? How does that connection get made?
Yeah, so I mean, what's beautiful, again, is we have referrals come from all sorts of different places. It might be a public health nurse who's been out to see a family and notices there's a need, and we'll share our information. So on that end, it can come from referral organizations. It can come from the individual themselves calling in to say, I need help, I'm in this scenario. I think today the call was, mom's gonna have a baby in 3 weeks and needs help for their other 2 children. And so then that call comes in, we do a complete intake of the mother and her children, down to what's their favorite food to eat. And of course, medical scenarios, making sure they have insurance, health insurance coverage. All of our families have to have health insurance to come with us. And then from there, we put that need out to our, what we call our Opportunities for Good email. And then our volunteer group can look at that email, and just as they've mentioned before, things come through and you can say yes, no, maybe so. And then once that match is made, then there's an introduction with the parent and that child so they can have a chance to meet. And then depending on timing, it might be a quick turnaround or not, depending on if it's a planned event or not. And all that happens with our social work team here at the office, and begin the journey that way.
For foster care, what is the need? Are there enough foster families to fulfill the need for the children that need the care?
I wish I could give a flat answer, but unfortunately the answer is it depends. We have a profound need for, as Matt and Becca can attest to, homes that will take sibling groups and also homes that will take teens, school age and teens.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to dispel the myth about teenagers. I mean, there's an assumption and a stigma that the older the child is, the more difficult they will be. We have some pretty profound, resilient teenagers that, have proven through some form of traumatic history that they are resilient and able to succeed. These are great young people that really, really need a safe and loving and stable home. We have plenty and lots of homes that'll take birth to 3. And unfortunately, that's just not a need that we have right now. But for older children and sibling groups, and especially teens, that's our highest priority right now.
All right, I think that's all of the questions. Before we end this, is there any last words you hope people take away from this? Do you have any last thoughts?
I guess my challenge would be, can you picture yourself in the story? Where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself being that driver? Do you see yourself being that host family? I really encourage you to jump in and get yourself approved as a host family. That doesn't mean you ever have to say yes, but you'd be prepared should something come your way. In that process, the beautiful thing that happens is you're exposed to a philosophy of work, and you're exposed to the reasons why, like exposed to the systems and the racism and the culture and all those pieces of a puzzle that helps you better become a compassionate person. We like to say we train people to become competently compassionate. And then that opens up the doors to say, oh my goodness, I really don't want to host a kid, but I'd be interested in being a friend to a mom when she's walking through a trauma. And so find yourself in the story, because there's a place for every single person. And the time is now. It's not going to get any better. I mean, we all know the news said every day during COVID that because there's not eyes and ears to hear some of the things that people are struggling with, there's going to be needs out there. And I think people are afraid, again, to ask for help. And so anything we can do to dispel that myth of you're a bad parent and help empower people, it's going to be a powerful opportunity for the church to be known for all the right reasons, right? Wouldn't it be great if we made the news for all the right reasons? So that's my challenge to you today.
I'll just add, Nicole and I each have a comment, but one for me is, this isn't necessarily the most striking thing, but a friend in a small group reminded me that, this is an opportunity for us to give women options to choose life, perhaps. As you're weighing that heavy option and you're looking around at the resources available to you, if you have something like Together for Good, where as a single mom that may be down on her luck that runs into an issue, it could be loss of housing, right? We've had moms that are looking for respite as they go find housing. It could be loss of work, moms that need to go and get an education, a license, even just go find a job for a week. And you have that support. You're helping moms make that choice for life.
Yeah, and before we became a host family, I often thought about, does the impact, even those first few hostings, does the impact of those short hostings really make a difference in a child's life? And I'll just tell you a little story about a little 3-year-old boy that we hosted. And it was, relatively short hostings, a weekend. I think the longest we had him was 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, something like that. And there was times that he would come and visit, and we kind of lost a number of reasons. We lost contact with him for a couple of years, but he's now 6, and he tells his life story as he was born from his mom's tummy, and he came to live at our house, and he talks about all the things we did, remembers details of, toys he played with, things that he ate, very good memory of all the things that I had to go back and look at pictures to make sure he was right. And then he tells the stories. Then he went to live with the family he lives with now. And so in this little boy, it did make a difference. And I think it makes a difference in all the kids' lives. And it matters to God. And we are, we're not all called to do this work, but some of us are, and it matters to God, and he sees it, and it makes a big difference for his kingdom. And I think it matters to our future world. Like Maridel, you were saying, now more than ever with COVID and all the things we've had going on lately, we have a chance to make a difference in the future world.
That's great. Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I know I was very encouraged by this discussion, and I learned a lot personally, so I'm sure many others did as well. So I just want to say thank you to all of you, and thank you to everybody who joined us tonight, and we hope to continue the conversation. I expect to be working alongside a lot of you at Southland and outside of Southland as we continue on this journey together. So thank you, everyone.